right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning PESACHIM Daf Kuf Tes. We will begin on Kuf Ches Amid Beis towards the bottom of the Amid. Before the intro, if I said that Sipurei Chasidim was authored by Rabbi Levin, I stand corrected. It was authored by Rabbi Zevin, by the founder of Encyclopedia Talmudis, by the great Rabbi Shlomo Yosef Zevin, who also wrote Sipurei Chasidim and the Parshiyos and the Moyados. And another detail about yesterday that we spoke about the Hasidus of the color of the wine, but al pinigla, the reason why we're supposed to have dafke red wine during the Seder for the Dalet Koises, that's because the wine also reminds us of the dam, of the blood. And it was for that the Taz says that in his days, tragically, you had the blood libels. He advocated then, during that era, temporarily, not to use red wine. Now we're going to start today continuing to learn the din of Dalet Koises as it relates to children. And this will be a very insightful chinuch opening. We're going to have Rabbi Yehuda, who will not only once concerning the din of Dalet Koises, but also later on Daf Kuf Tes regarding the mitzvah of Simchas Yantav, reject some sort of universal appropriateness of using wine, and he will advocate a substitute that's more specific for the person. So there is men, there's women, there's children, and as we'll see, each one should do according to their specific taste and nature. We're going to be speaking about the volume of a revius, which is going to be connected to the volume of a mikvah. We're going to be speaking a little bit about the shulchan hapanim that is going to be in the Beis Hamikdash. And even though we're going to also learn in Chagiga that many or almost all of the Klei Kodesh, all of the holy furniture in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, had substitutes in case they become tamei, for us to right away replace them with a tahored one. The Tanoim say that the Shulchan, because of lefanai tamid, did not have a substitute. But if it would become tamei, we would have to toivel it, and that's going to conclude the sugya of mikvah. And God willing, we will start today a phenomenal topic called the sugya of zugois. Zugois is plural for zug. Zug means a pair. And we will see that especially in the times of Chazal, people were very careful, especially when it comes to food or beverage consumption, not to consume food or beverages in paired numbers. Initially, it was not only not to have two of something, but it was not to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, anything in an even number, dafka everything in an odd number. As the sugya will unfold, we're going to limit, we're going to qualify this whole carefulness, and then at the end of the sugya, we'll explain how this is not that relevant, or people are not that particular these days, but at least today we'll give an intro, al pi chasidus, to appreciate what's the problem with even numbers. Okay, let us start on the Kuf Ches on the base. We left off at the end of 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid, Tanu Rabbanan, going into 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. We began the sugya of Dalet Koisos. We had on top of the Amid, or in the bottom of that Kuf Ches Amid Dalet, that Nashim Chayavais Ba'arba Koisos Halalu, as we had Sha'af Hein Hoyu Ba'oisa Hanes, and now we're going to go children. Tanu Rabbanan, Hakoil Chayavim Ba'arba Koisos Halalu. Echad anoshim, the echad noshim, and now the novelty of today is the echad tinoikos, and children as well. And that Omar Rabbi Yehuda v'chima toyelas yesh latinoikos bayayin. What purpose or what benefit is there for children to consume wine? Now, some understand that the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing only because the Tanakama is even referring to children that did not reach the age of education. And I know that there isn't a one age for chinuch for all. For different mitzvahs, there are different ages. Many understand that if children are already of the age that they're shaykh to the chinuch of having arba koises, then why would there be an argument about it? There will be no argument. Elamat must be that just like we had on top of the Amid, that women, which normally would be exempt from any positive commandment, even if it's rabbinic, that is time bound, but they are yes included and obligated in the din darbar koisa sha'af ein hoyev oisa hanes. So the Tanakama therefore takes that same logic and he applies it to children, even though that they are not in the age of chinuch yet. But by Pesach, it's an exception. They were saved by all of the decrees of Paroi and of the Golus Mitzrayim, by the miracles that Hashem performed for us when He took us out of Mitzrayim. So there's like a unique halacha that they should be participating in the Seder and in the dinam of Pesach, even though that normally we would not include them because they are that young. And that is where Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says, no, if they're not higia lechinuch, then they're not. Then there's no inyan al pi chinuch to give them the dalot koisos. That's one way of understanding this machlokes. And then there's a whole different approach. That of course the Tanakama was not saying that children that are not of the age, whatever age that is, of course that they're not included in the mitzvah because listen, they're not obligated, they're not bar or bas mitzvah. And if they're not of age to appreciate it and to be educated, then there's no point. Tanakama is speaking about children that are of age. But Chevra, understand that we're not speaking about grapes, we're speaking here about wine. And wine, and especially based on what we learned, that at least 2 of the 4 cups, and that became all the 4 cups, is consumed derech chedus. It's connected to our freedom. If it's connected to freedom, then you have to enjoy. There has to be some benefit from the wine. Now, we also spoke out that we eat reclined, even though many people are not even comfortable when they recline, but we are reenacting our experience. Fine, but there's a limit to that. Rabbi Yehuda is saying that even if they are higia lechinuch, don't give wine to children because it's going to hurt them. It is of no benefit. These are the 2 ways of understanding the machlokes. But Rabbi Yehuda adds, Elom, turning to that kuftes, kiloyos is parched grain that is dried through roasting. That was one of the delicacies of the day. And also egoizim, walnuts. These are the types of candies that the children ate. Now, some people don't have the words be'erev Pesach, but all read the words be'erev Pesach. Engage the children. Yes, says Rabbi Yehuda, wine, like we mentioned, according to many, even if they are higia lechinuch, wine is not good for kids. It's not meaningful for kids. You're not being mechanech them with anything. They're drinking something that's going to hurt them. But you give them certain delicacies on Erev Pesach. Why? Now hold on. Why? Kedei shelo yishnu, in order for them not to go to sleep. V'yishalu, and they should begin to ask questions. And here again, if you take out the words be'erev Pesach, as some gersois don't have the words be'erev Pesach, so what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is that during the Seder itself, you interact with the children in an extraordinary way. For them to be curious, for them not to fall asleep, and for us to engage them because of chinuch as much as we could with the sipur of the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Even if the Girsa is be'erev Pesach, still, you already start interacting with them prior to Pesach. For them to already understand, today is special, today is the Seder. And that also will keep them intrigued, and they won't go to sleep, and they'll be awake, and they will interact to the best of our ability during the Seder. Furthermore, continues the Braisa, that Amru Olav al Rabbi Akiva, or others have the version Rabbi Tarfon, Shoya Machalek Keloyos ve'egoizim l'tinoikes ve'erev Pesach kedoy shelo yishnu v'yishoalu. In other words, this concept of interacting with children is should be done even by the Rebbe of the Jewish people, by the great Rabbi Akiva, by the great Rabbi Tarfon. Adarabah, this is even more. They're going to be, wow, the Rabbi Akiva himself gave us these items. Why did he give us these items? Something special is happening. So not wine, but not wine and nothing. Not wine, but what is age appropriate for them. Oh, now we're going to have a shtickle brayso. Everyone quotes these words. Now we apply the following words not in the same context, not with the same meaning as we have it in its source. And it's so geschmack to learn the source. Everyone knows, ba'afikoymen today, right after Yachatz, so we break the matzah into 2 with all of our menhagim, and the larger of the middle piece is broken, then I'll pick Kabbalah into 5 smaller pieces, and then you put it aside, and the children grab the afikoymen. And many people, when it comes to the grabbing of the afikoymen, they use the words choitven. We never use the word steal. We have to be careful for chinuch. But they use the words that the kids are choitiv, they grab the matzahs. Nothing wrong with using that statement, but it's good now to know what that statement was used for in the beginning. What's the origin? What's the real meaning? Not the borrowed meaning, but not the shem hamushal, but the shem ha'etzem. We grab or we snatch matzahs on the night of Pesach, and it's in the night of the Seder. Why do we snatch these matzahs? For the children not to fall asleep. Let's read here in the Rashbam many understandings of snatching of the matzah. None of them have to do with the way we borrowed this term and applied on our minig. Nothing wrong with the minig Yisrael, nothing wrong. It's good, the minig Yisrael, that the children chop the matzahs if we have such a minig. But let's read what it means in its source. So that the Rashbam, let's read the Rashbam 13 lines into the Rashbam, 13 lines from the top. Choytvin matzah, says the Rashbam, listen to this. Magbihin es haka'ara, that during the reading of the Haggadah, you uncover the matzahs. Bishvil tinoiker sheyisho'alu. Choytvin means to uncover it. Ve'istem afarshi. Choytvin matzah means something else. Snatching, grabbing means that oichlin maher, that when you eat the matzah, you eat it quickly. Says the Rashbam, Shnei l'shoynes halalu, perush rabbeinu. However, v'yesh garsin, explicitly, matzos magbihin es haka'ara. Right? Sheyesh b'matzah mara rebeis tavshilin. So don't, because if the meaning is you uncover it, then how is snatching uncovering? Adarabah. Some people have that girsa. Now we also, as we have in the Rebbe's Haggadah beautifully, we uncover the matzah a lot. And there's inyan and mol al pi Kabbalah why matzah should be covered, why matzah should be uncovered. Don't forget that one of the simple taiches of the words lechem oini, as we already had before in the Masechta, yeah, I know that in the English, this is the bread of affliction. Yeah, but lechem oini also means that the lechem she'oinin oleha devarim harbe. It's the bread upon which we relate the story. A lot of the uncovering of the matzah has to do with the concept of worship, relating the sipur, Yitzias Mitzrayim, on the lechem, on the matzah. But let's go back over here. Then the Rashbam continues. V'linira choytvin means, misalken es alechem miyad hatinoikis, we snatch it away from the kids. It's amazing. The opposite of how we apply it. We don't allow the children to eat matzah. Shelo yiyu yishenim mitoich machal harbe. Because when you eat a lot, especially when you eat bread, now the people that are anti-gluten, they'll love this. You eat bread, bread will make you heavy. Bread is going to make you tired. Kederach hatinoy, that children, when they have from the grains, if they eat, after they eat, they become tired, right? And therefore, they won't be engaged anymore. So what do we do? Now that that's the way that Rashbam is teaching. We grab the matzah away from them. We don't allow them to eat too much of it, for them not to feel tired, in order for them to stay awake. And again, we borrow this term nowadays in the same concept that we want to keep them engaged. So they snatched afikoimen, and then they can ask of us, and we promise them svarim, and how we should be zoichet, that should be good for our kids, and v'chulei. So we borrow the term of snatching the matzah. Okay. Tanya, back inside the Gemara, back inside the Braisa, we're up to the base of the Bach. That Tanya, Omar Olav al Rabbi Akiva, that miyom avli Omar gives Islam in the Beis HaMedrash. He never said now is the time to end the learning session. Learning never ends. But not like in camp, learning never ends, and that's the cue that learning is ending. No. He never said that it's time to get up. There was only 2 times a year that officially the Beis HaMedrash closed down. Chutz, listen to this, Ma'arvei Pesachim and Arvei or Erev Yom HaKippurim. Again, to point out that we spoke out the Tosfos in the beginning of the Perek. Why not Erev Pesach, Erev Yom HaKippurim, or Arvei Pesachim and Arvei Yom HaKippurim? Okay, be that as it may. That be'erev Pesach or Arvei Pesachim, why did he stop the learning in the Beis HaMedrash? In order for the children not to fall asleep. In other words, he told his chevre, his talmidim, the koilel yungalite, go home. The wives were busy preparing food for the Seder. The wives were busy, and you needed the husband home to help with the children, particularly to put the children to sleep on Erev Pesach, Because if a child will take a nap on Erev Pesach, he'll stay awake at night. Gewaldig. Number 10, and that was why he stopped the learning in the Beis HaMedrash. On Erev Pesach, the Erev Yom Kippurim, Kidei Sheyachilu es b'neim, something similar. There was the husbands, the fathers were needed at home to help give the children food. Now, even though Halpi Halacha, right, Alter Rebbe writes, from what age do we start the chinuch in fasting for children? But even if it's children that are not going to be fasting at all, the busyness of Erev Yom Kippurim demanded that the husband should be home, the father should be home to help out giving food to the children. Okay, says the Gemara. Now that we mentioned the machlokes, the first machlokes we learned today between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, and let's go that even the Tanakama was only speaking about children shegiya, right? Shegiyu lechinuch. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda says even if they hegiya lechinuch, wine is not appropriate for that age children. You're not being machanach them with anything. Oh, so Tana Rabbanan are similar machlokes, not the negei Pesach. We're going off Pesach for a moment. Chayiv odem l'sameyach banov ubnei beisei beregel. A man is obligated to give, to gladden the hearts of his children and of all his family members on Yom Tov, as it says, quoting a pasuk in Parshas Re'eh, v'samachta b'chagecha, and the pasuk over there explicitly continues, right? V'samachta b'chagecha, we state ato uvincha uvitecha v'avdecha v'amosecha. The Torah says clearly, it's like a begoyment. Okay. So if I have an obligation, not only to experience joy, but I must gladden the hearts of my children. So the question is, Bameh misamcham. And again, the words ato uvanecha, we're speaking about the children, even minors. So the Tanakama says again, the yayin. In other words, there's some sort of a universal appropriateness of wine. Same concept. And here, Rabbi Yehuda says, consistent with what he says, B'negeyam, the din dalet koisa is no. No, you can't make a blanket statement, yayin. Anoshim b'roy lahem. It's with what gives them joy. There's no objective item. It's subjective. For men, what's subjective to them? B'noshim b'roy lahem. Interrupting the Braisa explains the Gemara. Anoshim b'roy lahem. Taka means by yayin. For men, wine, right? Yayin is misameach, elikim, ve'enosh. V'noshim b'mai. So Tani Rabbi Yosef, Bavel, the big dates of Einim. This is obviously you have to have foresight. You have to buy this prior to Yom Tov. Buy your wife a gift. Buy your colored clothing. The Eretz Yisrael, the big day Pishton Mihoy guts and pressed linen garments. Tosus reminds us that there was a certain technique of pressing that they did not know in Bavel. But this is pashut that in Eretz Yisrael they wore linen, more pashut. In Bavel they more colored. The point is that in a chanami, whatever is considered something special in your locale, buy that for your wife and give it to her. That will bring her more joy than giving her wine. Weiter, Tanya Rabbi, and now he doesn't continue over here with the children, but the point is beroy lahem. So you have to know beroy lahem and do that accordingly. Perhaps beroy lahem. I know the koloyas and the goyim we learned about was only concerning Pesach. But something special for Yom Tov, so they look forward to Yom Tov and they experience a beautiful Simchas Yom Tov. And Tanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseiro Oimen, that Bisman Shabeis HaMikdash Kayim, there is a objective source of joy. Then ein Simcha Ela B'Basar. Guys, Basar is from a korban, make that clear, because Basar, without the Beis HaMikdash, we are allowed to eat Basar. No, it means that korbanos, they bring joy to everyone. And as it says, a pasuk in Parshas Kisavai, v'zavachta shlamim v'achalta sham v'samachta lifnei Hashem alikecha. So the Torah, the same verse, this is in the same pasuk. There is a link between eating karbanos meat and having simcha. It's the achshav that temporarily, many thousands of years, she'ein beis hamikdash kayam, now is ein simcha ela b'yayin, shenemar b'yayin yisamach al lavav v'enoish, and l'choura. And l'choura, let's go back to that during Bisman Beis Hamikdash Kayam, then basar should be given to everyone, and that also brings about simcha. Obviously, it's not the simcha of eating meat; it's the simcha of eating a korban. It's the joy of becoming connected to Hashem, which is what a carbon is all about. Miloshen Kiruv. Says the Gemara. Okay, now we're coming completely back to Hilchos Pesachim, and we are learning the sugya of Din Dalet Kaisos. And here again, we have to clarify what's the size of a cup. And we already had the sugya in brachas, and yeah, a cup should be a revi'is. How much volume is a revi'is? So today we speak about ounces or other common modern volume measures, but let's see how they went about it in those days. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, he was giving practical advice. Kasta de Moiraisa. Kasta de Moiraisa was some sort of classical, typical measuring utensil that was used when they would sell fish fats. That in his location, that measuring keli was exactly a revi'is. Haba b'tzipoira. That the kash de Moiraisa that is used in tzipoira, he havas kimin luga de nigdasha. Oh. I'm sorry, that has the size of a lug. A lug, I'm sorry, lug, guys, is a revi'is is a quarter of a loig that had exactly the size of a loig, of the biblical loig. And amachaya, that's a practical advice. Take that utensil, and when you drink, divide it into 4, and that's a revi'is. Uba meshara and revi'is shall Pesach, or all of the 4 cups together should fill up that cup or more. Guys, you can drink more, but the cup should not be less. Now, here again, a practical advice. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, tamnaisa kadmaisa. There was a measuring utensil called tamnaisa. Now, as the time went on, they made that utensil itself smaller. And that happened in the times of Rabbi Yochanan. So it was practical. Many people had access to the original tamnaisa, to the older version of the tamnaisa, to the bigger one. Everyone had access to the updated one. So he says that tamnaisa kadmaisa, the original tamnaisa, the havas b'tiveria, havas yisera alda, it's larger than the current updated smaller one. You understand? That's how that was inflation. So they paid the same price for the tamnaisa of whatever was in there, but then as things became more expensive, you got less of it. So he says the difference between the old one and the new one is exactly a revi'is. Let's take the old one, fill it up until the top, pour the liquid into the new one. The amount left in the old one is exactly a revi'is. Uba mishar and revi'is shall Pesach. Now all of that is nice if you live in Tzipoiri, right? If you live in Tiveria, if you have access to these utensils. We're trying to find some sort of medium that everyone should be able to get to the right amount. And what is classically used in the Torah are body parts. We speak about an amos, we speak about a zeres, v'chulei v'chulei. So he says, Amar Rab Chizda, revi'is shel Torah, if you want to know how to get the volume of a revi'is, whenever we speak about fingers, remember this klal, we are speaking about the width of the thumb. A tefach, we had this, is four thumbs. A tefach can be 5 fingers. We learn different tefachim, but just remember that. A tefach is 4 widths of a thumb, and an amma, that's the whole debate. The amma here will be bas shisha tefachim. Okay, we don't have to go through all of the math, but people that enjoy math will have a gavaldik machlokes between Rashi and the Rashbam, and it's very interesting. But let's go first to the simple. The revi'is shel Torah is like this: etzba'ayim al etzba'ayim. Take 2 finger breadths to long. Al etzba'ayim means times 2 finger breadths wide. So now you have the bottom, right? The dimensions of the length and the width. Beroim, how tall should the utensil be? Etzba'ayim v'chatzi etzba v'choymesh etzba. So it's 2 times 2, right? Plus a half plus a fifth, which is 2.7. If that is the empty space in the keli, not the outer walls of the keli, I don't know how thick the keli is, 2 by 2 by 2.7, that is exactly a revi'is. That's as clear, as limited, as defined as we'll get of a shiur here in Chazal. And how do we know that? So this number comes from the 40 saw of the mikvah. as we'll speak out. Kidatanya, when it says in Parshas Mitzayra, v'rochatz b'mayim, not b'mayim, with ashva, this is important, but mit pasach. V'rochatz b'mayim, eskol b'soroi. So here we're going to break down every single word. So first we're going to focus on the word b'soroi. Why b'soroi? His flesh. My flesh. Go in the mikveh. You go in the mikveh. Why your flesh should go into the mikveh? What are we trying to say with that? From that we learn shelo yehei davar chaitzes bein b'soroi l'mayim. From here we learn the biblical dinim of chatzitza. That all of your flesh, let me clarify the word all. Your flesh has to be in the water. With all of the pratim that we learned so many times, that biblically a chatzitza is roiv, if the majority of your body, or we separate the hair area from the rest of the body, if the majority of your hair area has something interposing it from the water, and it bothers you, roiv umakpid is what causes a chatzitza d'oraisa. Mid rabbanon, either roiv or makpid, even miut. And when it comes to women now, for Hilchas Nida, we're makpid that even if it's miut, and even if she's not makpid, lechatchila, we don't allow that as well. But anyways, from the word b'soroi, we learn about the concept of chatzitz. Number 2, says the Baraisa, the Torah could have written b'mayim. Now, whoever understands proper Lashon HaKodesh, b'mayim means in water, in water. B'mayim metapatach means in the water, because I hey hayidiyah. B'mayim, in the water, b'mei mikvah, with all of the dinim of mikvah, not just any water. When it says es kol b'soroi, now like we just mentioned, es kol b'soroi cannot mean that if there's anything interposing minimally on the flesh, then it's not okay, because mido oirais on a biblical level, it's okay. A chatzitz, it's only roivu makpid. So what's the kol b'soroi? You chap? So it must be the all your flesh, that is not speaking about any chatzitza. Mido oirais, if it's, you're good, imagine, even if it's roiv, but you're not makpid, is oichet good. So the kol b'soroi, that's the last line in the Amid. That's the teacher shekol mayim shekol gufay oilo bahem. That the gathering of water, the mikvah has to have in it sufficient water that will cover the entire body at the same time. In other words, there is a minimum amount of the waters in the mikvah. And according to, let's quote the Rashba in Toiras Habayis and many other Rishonim, they understand that mem sa'ah is a biblical obligation based on this pasuk. The kol as kol mayim shekol gufay oilem. Now the Torah did not write explicitly how much water is that. The Chachamim estimated how much water is that. But this is not a din derabanan. This is a din Torah. The kama hang that kufta samid beis amo. Here we go. Same concept we learned before by the Revius, right? What did the Brisa say? 2 finger breasts, 2 by 2 by 2.7. So here the Brisa is saying, Amma, guys, is if you take your hand and you go from the end of your middle finger, the middle finger is called Amma because it's used for the measurement of the Amma, and you go all the way down to your elbow, that's the Amma. Now, how much is it again in inches? You have all these details. We follow the sheet of Rabbi Avram Chaim Noah, who says that an Amma is either 1.5 feet, right, 18 inches or 19 inches. When it comes to a talus cotton, and you have to have a 2 amma. No, it's an amma on the front and an amma on the back, and an amma width. So that's the shit. What's the minimum size of the beged? I know that in yeshiva we were told to go with a size 24 inches. That's for something else. That's because if it gets crinkled up on your body, that's also the bendel, then it's not ideal. But up to minimum, once you have 20 inches, you're good, because it's more than the amma. The amma is 18 or 19 inches. But anyways, let's go to the shiurim of the Chazal. So how large, what's the minimum size of the cavity in a keli, in a mikvah? I take back, in a mikvah, that if you go into it, an average person will be completely, right, under the water, surrounded by water, an amma by an amma long, an amma wide, beroim shalish amma is the height of 3 ammas. And that's because the width of an average person is a amma. The height of a person without the head, 3 ammas. And since you go into that mikvah, and that your body displaces the water. It has no elsewhere to go other than up, right? So when you go in there, even though the water height begins with 3 amas, the keli is not 3 amas. The keli has to be much bigger. If not, the water is going to overflow. But the water should be 1 amma by 1 amma by 3 amas, and that's 40 saw. Then a person who goes in there will be completely covered, including the head, because of the displacement of the water. And Vishiyaru Chachamim, it's from here that we're going to go backwards with geometry to come to the 2 by 2 by 2.7. Vishiyaru Chachamim Shir Mei Mikvam is Arboim Sa'om. And just to say a little bit of the cheshbon, first of all, there's a very important machlokes between Rashi and the Rashbam, and they go backwards. And Rabbi Chaim will love it, but we're going to go very quick on this. Have a machlokes how to make the cheshbon. They're going to come to the same number. But just to know that at Revi'is, you have 3,840 Revi'is in 40 saw. And like we mentioned, tefach is made out of 4 finger breadths. 1 amma has 6 tvachim. When you put all these numbers together, one way or the other, you're going to come that if 40 saw is an amma by 3 ammas, then when you go backwards, then how much is it a Revi'is? 2 by 2 by 2.7. And let's go weiter. Okay, Amar Rabashi. Based on the above, that the minimum size mikvah is 1 amma by 1 amma by 3 ammas height, based on another presumption, that in the Azara itself, there needed to be a mikvah, because just like people could become tamei, as we going back to the end of the first Perek, like Rab Chanina Skana Kehanim, Kalim can also become tamei. And like we mentioned in the intro, that indeed, the Beis HaMikdash utensils had doubles. In case they became tamei, you can take them to the mikvah, but until then, be matayir them. The shulchan did not have a double because lefanai tamid. Ideally, we should never remove the shulchan. But what were to happen if the shulchan becomes tamei? You have to take it to the mikvah. Based on the presumption that the mikveh in the Azara was the minimum size. And now we established that what's the minimum size, an amma by an amma, the height of 3 ammas. So Amar Ravashi, Amar li Rav bar Chinana, it must be that Shulchan Shel Migdash Shel Perakim Have, that the Shulchan and the Beis HaMikdash, now we know the dimensions, like Rashi quotes over here from Parshas Truma, Amosayim Orkoi, 2 ammas long, 1 amma width, and an amma and a half of height. That was the dimensions of the shulchan. It must be, let's go to the amma that's wide, that the shulchan really was 2 tables, one on the side of the other, and each table was a half an amma. Because if the table would have been 1 piece, it would not have been made out of perakim, out of 2 parts. If it was 1 beautiful table, if, God forbid, it would become tamei, you would have to take it to the mikvah. And yes, as everyone points out, when you have a mikvah, the minimum size of an amma by an amma, we already had these cheshbonis many times in Chazal. So what will be the diagonal of 1 by 1? The diagonal will be, which is all approximation, 1.4. First, let's read the words of the Gemara, and then I want to add what I'm saying right now, b'shem many of the commentators here. So it says Shulchan Shel Migdash Shel Perakim Have, because the Is Al Kadai Techaduk Have Mihadak, if it was firmly attached, it was 1 piece, then Amsa, but Amsa Hechamat Malay, the mikvah again is 1 by 1. The width of the Shulchan, put it in by the width, fine. And I know, guys, the height won't be a problem, the length won't be a problem, but you have the smallest dimension of the Shulchan, and you're going to put it in through the smallest dimension will be 1 amma. 1 amma doesn't fit in 1 amma. Like something a little bit smaller than 1 amma fits in 1 amma.
Rabbi, the legs would be removable for sure, like according to this?
The legs don't have to be removed, Danny, because you would put it in standing up.
The legs are 1.5 amma, looks like height.
No, the whole height was 1.5 amma.
Right. So if it's only an amma wide, how's 1.5 amma going in there? You got to take the legs off, no?
Okay, could be. Okay, you have to. It could be. Make sure that someone says that. But what is very much spoken about is like this: What do you mean amsa ba'amsa?
The Rashbam says the legs are detachable.
The problem is that there's a diagonal. That's the big kasha here. The kasha is that who cares if the width of the table, let it be mahadik, let it be one piece, but put it in a diagonal, that was 1.4. And the answer is, and it must be that it wasn't only, you have the thickness of the tabletop. And as there was a zeir, there was the crown, there was a rim. So if it would have been made out of one piece, then they make a cheshbon, even in the diagonal it wouldn't fit. Even though the Gemara uses the words amma ba'amsa, it means it wouldn't fit. All of that is based on what we just learned, that the shiur that is needed, midoiraisa, according to the Rashba of Memsa's amma ba'ama, based on a presumption that they had a mikvah in the Azara, but they didn't have a large mikvah. I mean, we learned together, there was a mikvah on the ground, there was the mikvah for the Kohen Gadol, fine. But in the Azara proper, they had the minimum space allocated for the mikvah. It must have been the smallest mikvah possible, so the only way the shulchan could fit in there is if it was made out of parakim. And the whole concept of Pi Chasidus, the shulchan represents eating. The Rebbe has a beautiful sikha about mafreses parsa, why is that one of the simanim of kashrus, of iskafia, not eating in one go. So bislach, the table can be taken apart. The light, the menorah has to be one shtickle. So all of the shiva kanei ha-menorah, all of the different levels of Torah, we have to, there's no moderation. No matter, adarabel, know it all and learn more and more. When it comes to the table, so bislach. But coming back,
Rabbi, the table the only keli that was able to be metama?
No,
or to be
all the other kalim could have become tamei, but they were smaller.
So the menorah was smaller than the shulchan? Or maybe it was one piece.
By the menorah tzvika, there were. That's the word. By the menorah, there were substitute menorahs. We learned this together. I have to remember where that actually Shlomo HaMelech made an additional. Truthfully, he made the shulchan also. The Lefanai Tamid, I think, is written by the shulchan only. In other words, if you have a substitute tzvika, then you can remove it from the Beis HaMikdash, take it to a large mikvah. I think that's the word. Shulchan did not have a substitute. That was the only keli that didn't have a substitute. So if it became tamei, you needed to take it close. That was the issue. So there was a small mikvah close, and then they took it apart. Okay. Now the Gemara counters. Hold on, you're forgetting about what Shlomo HaMelech made. Umay kushya. What's the issue? Dilma biyam she'asa Shlomo haba matbulei. Shlomo HaMelech, Bisman Bayis Rishon, made a pool that's known as the Yam Shel Shlomo that was resting on oxen made out of gold from all the sides. And that mikvah, as we'll see, had 6,000 sa'ah. Herst. The Tani Rabchia Yam She'asa Shlomo Machzik Meya V'chamisha mikvah, because the mikvah has to be 40 sa'ah. Mikvah Tara. So, no, it was made out of one piece, and the Yam She'asa Shlomo was a proper mikvah. Now, this is a huge problem because you cannot use a keli as a mikvah. And even if the keli is now connected to the ground, that means if you have this huge basin, let's go, guys, that 40 saw is approximately 120 gallons. That's the way we hold. Let's say you have these, big water kalim that has that shiur plus 10. I don't care. It has the 40 saw. And you cement it to the ground, it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing because it was a keli. Now, when people build a proper swimming pool out of tiles, which means that it was never a keli prior to it being in the ground. It was created in the ground. That's not called a keli. It was from the outset, karka. That's a good mikvah. But the Yam She'asa Shlomo was a basin. So Tosfos asks over here, right, the second Tosfos under the Gemara, he quotes, the Yerushalmi that asks, and va'afagav the keli shemachzik mem shah, v'chule is not, the keli itself is not makabel tuma. His problem is that the yam, the material of the basin itself has a status of a keli. Umishane is quoting the Yerushalmi that Tipater resolve this question by clarifying, listen to this, that the basin was connected to oxen, and the oxen's feet, there were holes through the legs of the oxen, and prior to connecting those legs to the mayon under the ground, if you were to pour something or to put something in that yam, it would not be able to contain it. In other words, the keli was invalidated. How large of a hole do you need in a keli for you to invalidate it, mitreiras keli? And therefore, when you fix it while it's already connected, that will be a good mikvah. Today, if a person, let's say, would buy a hot tub, a practical backyard mikvah, and it has to have the shiur of 40 so, 120 gallon, and you connecting it to the ground is worth 0. But if after you connect it to the ground, you make a hole, you perforate it, you have to know what you're doing to fix it that it shouldn't leak. And then you fix it, so now you created it the first time when it's already connected to the ground. And Tosfos quotes the Yerushalmi, that's exactly what happened. Okay. And you have to come with all the details on Tosfos. That's mamash a very interesting practical halacha that now because of COVID, a few people here, they put it in their backyards and then had it to be adjusted. If not, it's garnish vert to have just a hot tub in your backyard, even though it's connected now. After you connect it, you have to be mavatal toiras keli by making a hole through which a pomegranate can fit. It means the hole is larger than the pomegranate. However, I forgot the exact shit in inches. Where was it? Whoever, if someone has a picture of, we know exactly where it was placed in the outside courtyard. Now you see from here also that it was connected to a mayon. What was it used for? Could the kahanim, aside of the kiyod, was that could that have been used for their washing of the hands and the feet? That's something that is discussed over here. Okay, Chavra, we are now beginning a huge sugya that many people are not that familiar with yet, but let's now make it for more. Let's become familiar with it. The topic is called zugos. Zugos is the plural for zug. And they share the following intro. That we have a lot in the Gemara. We have discussions about demons, about shadim. And this is really connected to a question of, is there real evil or darkness in the world? Now, in Nigla, the discussion is darkness just the absence of light? Or is there something darkness? There is a metzias that God created as darkness. And as we say in the Birchas Kriyishma, right, that there's boirei choshech. I'm not speaking only about the choshech that God Almighty used by Makas choshech, but I'm speaking about a ruchnius dika darkness. That there is a darkness which is simply the absence of light, but there is evil in the world. And it doesn't have a specific form. And many people deny that it exists. And that is when it becomes the most dangerous. And that's very similar to the topic of shadim. That there are certain koichas that don't have any specific form. They can manifest. Demons are not the ugly red head horned creatures with the tail. They can look very attractive. But they don't have a physical specific manifestation because they try to manifest through everything. And you look back into human history and you have to acknowledge that there's so much that happened in this world that was mamish a manifestation of pure evil. Now, how to go about fighting evil is a very important topic, but we're not going to speak about that. But we have to first begin, we have to acknowledge that there is evil. The origin of evil, the origin of all evil is by denying that it exists. And that finds its root expression when you hear two sides to something and you say, okay, there's two sides to it. The moment we give equal validity to both sides of many topics, which should not have two sides, they have two sides because God created life and God created death. God created good and God created bad, and God tells us to choose life and choose good. But the notion of there's two sides to it. I see your point and I see your point, which is a very democratic, politically correct way of looking at things, and that is the source of all evil. That in itself is not evil. And by the way, I'm not saying there are many things that could have two sides. Many things could have, but Torah introduces absolutes, which is gavaldik. You know, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal.
So
Doing
what's
what
the
God
point
wants
of
is good.
pshara?
Huh?
And it didn't Torah, pesher, pshara?
Nothing wrong with a pshara, Samach. Nothing wrong with a pshara in many contexts. I'm not saying that nothing has two sides. But the Eitz Hadas Toivara, this concept that there's a intertwining of good and evil, and people have to, the avoid of the tikkun of the Eitz Hadas is to disentangle it, to have clarity. There is a sitra achra, but it's sitra achra. It's not equally chashiv. The buying into the notion of, okay, the good is not pure good. There's a lot of not good in the good, and the bad is not so bad. I see your point, I hear your point, there's this side and there's that side, everyone has a perspective. Many times, that's the beginning of all evil. And that's why the demons in the Gemara are not huge, they're miniatures, because whoever is involved in learning halacha at least has a clarity. What's halacha? This is kosher and that's not kosher. And by the way, even in Torah, there are certain things, it's a mitzvah, it's not minamuvchar. There are things that are azoy, a little bit this, a little bit that. But we have access to absolutes. Not that everything is black and white, but there are black and whites in life. And there are certain activities that we have to call out and say, this is evil. Not that I get your perspective. I know you have to understand where he or she is coming from. Sometimes, no. It's really evil that's manifesting through our behavior. Now we have this, don't think it's not out there. It's in us as well. So when you have a child doing certain things that are cruel, and they have a justification. Sometimes it's a justification, but sometimes it's pure evil, and it has to be called out. So zugais is the root of all evil. The concept of both sides are of equal size. That's called a pair. And to stay away from zugais, especially when it comes to food or to beverage, and as we'll begin, it began with anything. Don't do things in pairs. When you use an odd number, then at least it's clear that one side is greater and stronger than the other. Why are we speaking about the whole topic of zugais? Because din dalit kaisis. The Chazal are telling us to drink 4 cups of wine. Now, even though that the greatest danger of being connected to this dark force of zugais is when you have 2, not 4, 6, 8, 10, but even when you have any even number. So asks the Gemara, guys, in the middle of the Amid, when it says in the Mishnah, don't have less than 4. And by the way, we already quoted the Mishnah Kuf Yud Zayin when we're saying don't have less than 4, because we are allowed to drink wine between the first and the second, right? We are allowed to drink wine between the second and the third. We may not drink wine afterwards. But minimally, you have to have 4, and the din is you have to have 4. How can the Chachamim enact anything that can bring you into danger? There's a danger of being connected to pairs. Did we not learn? We learned in Abraisa. Lo yoichal adam today. Don't eat pears today. Anything. Don't eat 2 apples. Don't eat 2 pears. Don't eat 2 eggs. Don't eat 2. Today, don't drink 2. Right, the whole story the Alter Rebbe quotes, the whole Maisa that the Pasuk Pumim Begirs of Rabbi Bar Nachmani, right, was a part of that was that the messenger of the king that was trying to find Rabbi Bar Nachmani because he supposedly was not getting the Jews off on paying taxes, that he drank zugais in a bar and he was possessed with a demon. And the Rabbi saved him by giving him the 3rd cup. Don't drink 2. V'lo yikaneach today. Mamish, look at this. This is already not by food. When a person relieves oneself and they have to clean themselves, don't do it twice. Do it once, do it 3 times, do it 5 times. Use an odd number. When a person is having relations with his wife, don't do it twice. Everything will be clarified in a moment. So how can you have dalit koisois? Wow. Azah, gavaldik akasha. And guys, we're gonna spend some time on this whole topic. So Amar Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, many answers. Answer number 1 is Amar Kro, when it says in Parshas Boy that Leil Shimurim, it's a night that God is guarding us in a revealed way more than any other night of the year. Indeed, since Leil HaMashumar Amazikin, the Shemirah that we have is from everything. Also from these spiritually damaging agents known as Mazikin, demons, Shadim, and they are connected, like we mentioned. Zugais is not evil, but it's demons, it's demonic, it's the beginning of evil. It's two sides. There's two sides to everything. So the night of the Seder, we are protected from Azikin. Moiridik. Protected to the point that you can have it, nothing to worry about. Many people until nowadays, they don't lock their doors at night. Right?
On Shabbos too, Rabbi?
I'm sorry.
On Shabbos also are we protected?
No. It means on Shabbos, you have your cup, when you drink, have another one to make sure it's not even. But then you won't know, maybe that became even, so have another cup, just to make sure you don't have it even up. But Rabbi, answer number 2. That since the cups are not reshus, see, there's reshus and there's mitzvah. Since koishel bracha mitzaref l'toiva ve'ena mitzaref l'ra'a. Wow, how do you get 2 pairs? Because you have one, and then you have the second, which you're calling number 2. He's saying that a koishel bracha. Look inside the last line of the Rashbam. Rabbi's answer. Birchas HaMazon, we're calling that koishel bracha. Shu shlishi l'ra'a. Einoi mitzaref lahashlim l'sakana. Im shoyse levi achrov. In other words, the first one is not a problem. It's 1. The second one is not a problem because you're not done with drinking. The third one is not a problem because it's 3. What's the problem is that the last one will be number 4. The cup of bracha is so powerful that you can't count after it. It's like a standalone. It sticks out. So the final one is not like that. So really what you had 3 and 1. 3 and 1 is not zugais. You have to know how to count. It's about the kavanah here. It's all mystical things. Ravina Amar, that there's many ways of learning it. We're going to read it like this. Even though, add these words, even though arba kosei takinu rabbanan derech, which means that they all share a commonality, that they are being consumed because it's derech, and it is the commonality of various cups that would allow them to be connected one with the other, but they also share something unique. And their uniqueness does not allow them to be combined together, even though there is a connecting theme, but there is a unique theme for each one. Also, that's the Iker Kol Chad V'Chad Daf Kuf Yud Mitzvah Ba'api Nafsho. It is a standalone. So the first one is Kiddush. The second one is a Mitzvah of Magid. The third one is Birchas HaMazon. The fourth one is connected to Halal. Each one is connected to another theme. So don't say, but they're all derech. Yes, but no. And the no is what separates them. So it's not 3 and 1. It's 1, 1, 1, 1. So there's no zugais. Now asks the Gemara, hold on. What it said in the Braisa lo yaset tzarach of today, that a person should not have 2 acts of cohabitations with one spouse, one right after the other. Don't fulfill your needs twice. That doesn't make sense. Asks the Gemara, Amai, why not? Nimlachu. Nimlachu means, let me go to food. If a person eats something and they only ate one, and then they decide I'm having another one, it doesn't combine. Because if from the outset you did not have kavanah to have 2, so just because de facto you had 1 and then 1, it's called 1 and 1, not called 2. As the Rishonim explain, when a man has a relation with his wife, right after the relation, for a moment at least, his physical needs are met. He doesn't have a desire. So then he gets another desire. But the satisfaction or the ending of the first relation should separate it from the second one. So nimlach, it should be like someone who ate and it was not planning, and then he decided to eat again. So how do they combine? So Amar Abaye, indeed Abaye says, Hachika Amar, like this. Now this already clarifies Zugais. Zugais connects us or makes us susceptible to demonic forces, which primarily try to harm us. Harming us, it has to do with us being more connected to the real source of evil. But when a person eats two, just eating two in itself doesn't mean that I will be damaged. It means I'm susceptible to being injured.
Rabbi, I have a quick question.
Let me just finish it. When a person has an act of cohabitation, their body becomes weakened. When a person is weakened, they are more susceptible to becoming injured. So what the Braisa is saying is, don't eat two foods, and it's very important. We're going to read the version in the side, and right away afterwards have a relation. Just having two eggs in itself, it's not going to hurt you. But if right afterwards, then you are v'yaset tzarachav, now you're really vulnerable. Likewise, I'm just reading the Girs on the side. V'lo yishta today, and then v'yaset tzarachav, and the yaset tzarachav is afilu pamachas. Why? Because dilma cholish, because of the weakened state physically that comes upon a man right after the act of bia, based on the fact that prior to that he connected himself to zugais, then umitra, they might get harmed. Yes, Baruch, what's your question?
The question is two pieces of toast, two eggs. If you remove a chazayas, one of them,
I'm sorry, I can't hear it one more time.
If you remove a chazayas of a piece of toast, if you have two pieces of toast,
yes,
or a little egg from the two eggs,
yes,
before you make it, does that equal an odd number of eggs?
Yes, it does, Baruch. Yes, it does. Bechlal, people are not that careful about zugais nowadays. We'll speak this out at the end. But if you want to be more cautious about it, then it's important here to get the spirit of the law. And the spirit of the law, Pi Chasidus, is the concept as that we have absolutes. And mamish, that's the nakuda, that in the Gemara you'll never find a fully grown demon. So they're demons. They'll be midgets. They'll be little garnishes. They won't be big, because when you learn Torah, you chap that really there's no zugais. There's one God. Now you can argue there's nothing other than God. On that level, there isn't duality, because einoid mulvadoi. But in the Yehuda Tata, in the world that we live in, we have to know that there is good in the world and there's bad in the world, and we have to acknowledge its existence. That in itself is the beginning of the solution. And no, not everything is equal, this side and that side. Not everything has two equal sides. Things have two sides, but there are many things that one side is good and the other side is bad. This is kosher and that's treif. This is Shabbos, and this is the weekday, going back to the separations that we had before. A lot more. This is going to be fascinating to be continued.
So, Rabbi, if you just don't pay attention to it, you're saying that's not a solution.
Well, Shem Pesayim Hashem, yeah. Let's speak.
I want to make two eggs. I want two sunny side up eggs. I don't want three eggs. I have to make a third one? I mean,
you don't have to. Don't have two eggs and have right afterwards a relation with your wife. I'll be this. We're learning Gemara, guys. Let's go. We're going from the beginning, and let's jump to the end by the end, not in the beginning. We're going to get there.
Rabbi Zajac.
Good.